As you look at what's happened with tax cuts and with the budget that came through, how is that affecting small business in particular? Because you know small business.
I spent 8 years in a manufacturing business in Delaware before I got involved in county government. I spent 10 years in county government, which really focuses on trying to help support job growth at the local level, which overwhelmingly means small business. And I, too, am, as you mentioned, going to the Goldman 10,000 Small Business event with Tim Scott, a Republican senator of South Carolina. We're going to do a joint event. I'm optimistic that the environment in our economy for the growth of small business is now wide open. One of the things I focus on in the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee is trying to make the federal program, the Small Business Administration, as accessible and relevant to small businesses as possible. I recently hosted the Small Business Administrator from the Trump administration in Delaware for a chance to visit a number of small businesses and to hear what's working for them and what's not working for them. Getting better access to capital is a key challenge for small business, and one of the reasons the summit today is so exciting is it's showing how small businesses are accessing capital.
Well, and I got a peek at the survey that they did of small business. They said number one is getting capital, number two is regulation as a practical matter. Well, when you talk about that environment, are you at all concerned about the prospect of inflation and higher interest rates? Because there are a lot of people in the markets right now that are concerned that the agreements that have been made on budget and tax cuts are going to lead to a lot more borrowing, and that's going to drive up interest rates, and we're going to have higher inflation. Does that affect small business particularly?
It will. If we get back to an inflationary environment, if the cost of capital also brings with it steadily rising inflationary pressures, that will affect small business. And I do think you're going to see a lot of concern from the Fed and hopefully actions here in Congress to reduce some of that. The budget that the president proposed would dramatically increase our annual deficits. Our deficits have been coming down over the last couple of years, and I respect the president's priority of investing significantly in our defense capabilities, but his budget proposes meeting that by making significant cuts in programs like Medicare that he ran on not touching. Our challenge is that we're now going to see significant re-emerging deficits, and I don't think that's a good trajectory in terms of inflationary pressure.
Having worked in business, I did as well. It's about making tough choices. I mean, you'd like to do all of it, but you can't. I mean, there are always good programs and good people that you want to hire, put in places. Is there anybody in leadership today who really can step up and say, we have to make some tough choices on spending? I understand we'd like to fund it all. We can't. And this is the sensible way to approach it. Is there anybody who's doing that?
Well, I don't see in the current leadership environment where the president has set forth now 2 budgets in a row that made broad and sweeping cuts in domestic and dramatic increases in investment in defense. This year's budget proposal from the president abandons all attempt at trying to balance the budget in future years, which is a big move from Republican orthodoxy. In the last administration, there were serious efforts by Speaker Boehner and by President Obama to reach a difficult bipartisan deal on entitlements and on tax revenue that came close to passing but failed. There still remain some in the Senate who are concerned about our deficits and future interest rate environment. But the deal that we just reached on 2 years of spending is going to blow out our deficits and is going to cause some real challenges for us in the future.
Let's talk about immigration for a moment. As I say, we're starting debate now in the Senate. You have a common sense approach. What do you think the odds are as a practical matter?
70-30, we will get a 60-vote margin bill if we focus on the 2 areas where I think there's broad agreement, which is that we need to provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers brought here by their parents through no fault of their own, who are employed, going to school, serving in our military. I think there's broad agreement, and it's important that the president has embraced that as a possibility. We need to marry that with strong investment in securing our southern border and northern border, and I think there's a group of senators working hard on figuring out what that means. I have a bipartisan bill with Senator McCain of Arizona that is borrowed directly from a bipartisan bill in the House that Congressman Hurd and Congressman Aguiar crafted. It has 54 co-sponsors in the House, 27 Republicans, 27 Democrats, and it focuses on dreamers and border. I'm pressing for a vote on that as an amendment. I know that the president is endorsing the bill that Senator Grassley's brought forward. It tries to touch a whole bunch of other areas, the diversity visa, family migration. I think we should focus on the 2, strong investment in border security and a pathway to citizenship for dreamers. Well,
as I understand it, you just summarized the potential conflict, which is there could be a deal on the narrow sort of approach of dreamers get to stay, we build up a border. But the question is what the president would call chain migration, other people call family unification, on the one hand, and also lottery. lottery. At the House, if you get it through, 70-30 you said in the Senate, will Speaker Ryan take a vote on that bill?
He'll take a vote on it if the president supports it. That's what he said publicly repeatedly.
But the president said he won't.
The challenge is knowing what the president will really take. As we've seen in his time so far as president, he will initially stake out a position in one place and then ultimately agree to something quite different. The challenge, bluntly, with the diversity visa lottery is the president's famously unmeasured comments about it, and the people coming from countries in sub-Saharan Africa. That has inflamed this issue and made it quite difficult to make any changes to it. On family migration, it depends how broad the scope is that what the president's trying to accomplish. If he's trying to do a big family migration change, I think that's only possible for doing comprehensive immigration reform.
But if I hear it correctly, sir, what you're saying really is it will be up to the president, because you think you can likely get it through the Senate, but that the Speaker of the House will not put that up to a vote if the president opposes.
I'm not speaking for Senator,
no, I understand,
for
but
Speaker Ryan. That's our impression. Look, what I'm excited about is that Leader McConnell and Minority Leader Schumer have come to an agreement. We've got an open floor. Let's let the Senate be the Senate and take up a whole series of votes and refine until we get to a proposal that can get 60 votes. That's our role, and that's what I hope we'll do this week.